pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So, has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes from our previous meetings? If no one has any corrections or omissions, I'll ask for a motion to accept.
Make the motion to approve as written.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Aye. I was waiting for all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Has everybody had the opportunity to look at the Cse and Cpsc recommendations? And does anybody have any questions that we need to go into executive session for or to discuss later? If not, can I have a motion to approve those, please?
I'll make it.
Second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Brings us to our public comment. We are now back to where we can have guests in the audience. And, tonight we don't have any, but I probably ought to go through this just so that people are aware if they do decide to come. The Board of Education welcomes and encourages input from the public at board meetings. Please note that neither the board nor administrators may engage in dialogue or respond to questions concerning personnel or student matters. This is not an attempt to restrict public comment, but is due to protect the privacy of individuals involved as required by law. As a matter of courtesy to others in attendance, comments of individuals or groups shall be limited to less than 3 minutes. You don't have anything for me, right? 3 minutes. All right. I like this pace. Moving along to discussion items. Facilities met last week, wasn't it? Yeah, last fair week, yeah, last week. Got updates on the Townsend floor, our tentative projects we got coming up and everything else. Or he wants to go into more, how much detail we want to get on?
The Townsend floor project that we brought out for the last couple months, talking about the gypsum board over top of the steel trusses with the gypsum board deck, how that was failing in a few of the classrooms when it got nails down through it, things like that. So they did additional work on this, and Meg, you can correct me. They did additional work on this, and they found that in between the actual tiles themselves, there was asbestos in those glues, the adhesives themselves. It's not between the floor, finished floor, and the actual structure. It's actually in between the tiles themselves, so it's a vertical seam in those. So they looked at what would it take to actually take all of that gypsum board out, because we know it is failing in that wing. And then more importantly, what are the restrictions and what are the issues we're going to have logistically with doing that? Because if you open up that wing, it's in between your cafeteria in Townsend School and the actual offices. That whole wing would be closed both floors. So now you have 4 classrooms plus 4 additional classrooms. We have 8 classrooms. It potentially could impact the cafeteria, all the trafficking to your gyms. So these are some major considerations we were talking about in the facilities committee to say, if we have to take on this project, which we do because it's a health and safety type scenario, how do we logistically get all of that work put into a summer time frame? And we put that really back on CNS and those guys to say, as a board, I think we're going to be more comfortable with not disrupting our students. If that causes double time, double shifts to happen, let's see what those man hours are. Let's see what that proposal exists. Let's see what it looks like. Can we shave off a couple hours, or excuse me, a couple days on the summertime activities as far as ending in those portions of the building earlier for summer break, or starting a little bit later in there? Are there options to do that? But we really gave them a good focus of, we don't want to disrupt our students and staff right now in that, taking on that whole project. So logistically break it up into smaller chunks or figure out another way to manpower up to get that to happen through that time frame.
And is it possible to do it over 2 years, or does it have to be?
That's one of the scenarios they're gonna look
Okay.
at. Can we break it, and do a corridor in one half?
Right.
And then stop, and then the part that's failing right now that we had to put plywood over top of the
Yeah.
emergency situation, can we do that first?
Mhm.
And then logistically break up the other half for next calendar year, or do the whole thing? The only caution they had said is it would cost probably more because you're going to mobilize your asbestos removal team
Right.
twice to do that. But we really need to know what those costs are to make a sound decision on that. If to impact your total student base over there, which will be tough. You think about wintertime, having kids boot up, jacket up to get to the gymnasium outdoors. It's just logistically for our staff and students, it's just not prudent. So
No.
we have to know what those costs are to be able to even start to make those decisions. And I believe we came to the conclusion that we're going to actually bring the scenarios to the full board and describe them in detail to everybody here, so that the full board can make a decision on this. This is something the committee can only work so far before I think we need to have the full board approval to get everybody on board with it.
And they're looking to have them, I believe, for our September meeting, some of that logistics done, that legwork, so that we can have some information to start going on.
But for the time being, it's safe for everybody.
Yeah, right now they've put the plywood in place, things like that, so it is safe right now.
Okay.
Currently, when we did the assessment on that, this is just we know we have to take the next step at some
It's
point
just-
and replace those flooring, so this is the next step. To be clear, this is a totally separate capital project than what we're working on currently. The current project, we did not morph this scope into it because we promised the taxpayers that this is the scope of our project, this is our budget for our project, this is what you're voting on. Stop, make sure we get that well in hand and get that underway. Start looking at this in the background and say, okay, a year out, we have to go for public vote again to say, this is what we want to address as capital. But in order to be completely transparent, it's a lot easier to break those two apart. And that's what we decided to do as a group. So this is looking at potentially a November or December vote to be able to get voter approval to do this next capital project, which is a replacement of floors. So a lot of work needs to be done between now and then, especially from a logistical standpoint. So our consultants are going to bring in people to look at it and really hammer it out and say, what do we need to do here?
But we have a sound temporary solution for reopen and
Right,
everything
right.
like that, so
Yeah,
we're good.
and to be
Absolutely.
completely clear on this, currently, this is encapsulated. No student, no faculty can get to this joint.
Okay,
Right.
So
Mhm.
there's no physical way for anybody to get to this joint today.
Yep.
It's gonna be during construction, and actually going to be during demolition,
Right.
that it would be
Abated, yeah.
an issue. So that's why, there's
Mhm.
no,
Sounds good, thank you for that.
yes, thank you.
do you want to touch on the change order that we talked about?
So change orders, inevitably, when you get into a building project, you end up walking into a change order. We got reminded of that, as we asked, within the scope of this work is some threshold structural work. So, as was brought forward by the facilities committee, a reminder, to check the front entrance by the gymnasium at Townsend School for safety-related bluestone falling. So when we did that exploration, we asked BCA to do that exploration. It was even more severe than was anticipated. So we have we did a change order to get some exploratory work and some shoring up of that area to make sure that we're safe when we open the school. And then that's the other part of this next project, is that safety piece of that walkway. So when we did that, Meg and I and Corey, we went back and researched, and we had not had a discussion or set a threshold as a board regarding this capital project of any change orders that may come forward. So I'm looking for some direction from the board as to what do you want from us. Now, we've got the expectation that we don't want any. We've been clear, the facilities committee's been clear with both our architect and our construction manager. We don't want any. But in my opinion and in my experience, it's inevitable that they find something that they didn't know was there, and they got to work around something, make an improvement to the design or scope. So in the event that we have a change order, is there a threshold that you want brought forward to you, if not safety related, emergency, if not an emergency, for board approval regarding the project. So for instance, right now, transfers internally below 5,000, I approve transfers from the business office. Above 5,000, they come to the board. You know, so if it was felt that you wanted to keep that alignment, so that we're in line with our financial, or if you want a bigger threshold, I don't recommend none. I don't recommend figure it out and go ahead and do it on your own. I think it's good for the board to know
Needs to
where
be
you
over,
need something
yeah,
additional.
yeah, some checks and balances.
What do you think from the finance committee standpoint? I mean, if we see them twice, if they're over that 5,000 threshold, is there a way to consolidate and like kind of streamline that?
Well, I think you would have to go here for approval
Yeah.
versus information.
Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable sticking with that, and that's what I'm not familiar with from a building cost perspective, and just knowing
Mhm.
the dollars that come with those. Like, is it? What do you need in order to be effective within that kind of within that framework?
Especially knowing that it's on a month, you know, we're going
Right.
to 2 meetings a month now.
Right.
Correct. I would say as long as we've got the 2 meetings a month in between, if it's something that has a time-sensitive urgency, I'll bring it to the board and ask the graces of an emergency approval or something of that nature,
Mhm.
if it's that urgent. But given the fact that we are just 2 week, I'm guessing it will be okay, unless it's something they discover that needs to move in order for them to complete a section or task that's gonna cost us more money, or it's gonna be a safety concern if they don't get it done right away.
Yeah, the last thing we want is us to hold something up that costs us
Exactly.
dollars.
Because yeah, exactly. Because then they're waiting on go
Correct.
for us, and they're ready to move right on, and that's holding up the whole project. So.
So I really felt
But-
uncomfortable with the
but-
fact that we don't have a threshold, we at least haven't had this discussion.
Meg, what do you think is reasonable?
I think at a $5,000 level, probably most everything we get is probably gonna come here.
And is that gonna be a
That's-
holdup?
I mean, if you use the scenario, the one that we've had was related to studying the entrance, and that was 12.5, I believe. And
Yep.
so that would have been held up over the summer, about a month to get here.
So everything you said would likely, I mean, in the context of a building project, everything is expensive. We built in some overages, things like that. So I don't know if it should be a dollar amount or a percentage of,
We do.
total cost, things like that. But, okay, so everything would come over 5. What percentage of those projects would come over $10,000?
I mean, if you think about it, in all the budgets that we do, we always do it like a 10%
Yeah,
construction
right,
contingency.
right.
I don't know if you could do 5,000 or 10% of the contract, whichever is greater, or something like that, so it would
Mike?
be why.
My comfort level would be is if we're going to even get close to exceeding what's the contingencies in what we put out
Mhm.
for vote, then I would really wanna know that. But if, we built in, I say we have now, but it's been built into these projects that there are contingencies to be able to pull emergency funds from, that your top dollars here, this is built as part of it.
Mhm.
I wanna know if we're going to exceed what we build into that, if we ever run the risk of exceeding that, so that we exceed the total dollar, I think that definitely should be.
And running and I'm not trying to give you a second job on top of the one that you're already doing, but kind of running those overages separately, so we know how much, how much of that extra 10%, that elasticity is being kind of chewed up and shrunk a little bit. So
The only thing I can see with that is, and I'm with you, my only concern is how far down do we get that we find out, okay, we're running out, and now the last one that comes down is really significant, and we need to hit that
Right.
threshold, or maybe some in the beginning had, we might better have went, maybe not. I mean, I'm just,
Yeah.
because there's no perfect storm, you know what I mean? It's just the.
No, exactly.
Or,
You're not gonna, the tough part is, you're not gonna know how close, we know what our budget is.
Right.
But we have a change order right now for Eastman. We don't know what the bids are on phase 2, so we don't know where we're gonna, so
Right,
it's
right.
tough to know. where
Well,
you were
we-
gonna be total picture.
Yeah, we should know what the contingency number is though, right?
Right,
And that's the only
put
starting
in a
point.
10% contingency.
Yeah, that's the only starting point that I would have in my head without being able to bid everything separate.
Right.
But I just don't want, I would say yes, the 5,000 makes perfect sense, that we can track that way, but I don't wanna put us in a situation where we're holding up and costing us dollars. You know, there needs to be a secondary decision-making process that they can get an answer today. You know, I mean, if they have a problem this morning and they need to fix it by noon, AKA water, you know, things like that coming through, we should have something in place to be able to do that.
So what if we went to a $10,000 threshold on that, but like at a $5,000 advisory? Because that could be a simple email
Yeah.
that was just sent out to the board, hey, this come up, it's over $5,000, I wanna keep you guys in a loop, but if it's gonna be over $10,000, then we need to get together. Because we're kinda getting maybe both, best of both worlds.
And
that way.
I think that's appropriate because the scale of this type of project that we're doing, I mean, capping that at $5,000 versus like regular budgetary transfers that might go from something to cafeteria or whatever, it's kind of flowing within the context of the regular budget. That's $5,000 is significant in the context of this. It's not to
Right.
minimize what $5,000 is, but on a percentage basis, you're going to be coming to us an awful lot.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah,
track
potentially.
separately what that contingency number is, like when we apply?
That's what I
change
was
orders to
that's
that?
what I was wondering.
Not currently.
Okay,
Is
that's
that,
Doesn't mean we can't.
is that easy to do on like a monthly basis? Because I think we wouldn't need that every single meeting, but it would be really neat to see, you know, we're a month into this and we've used 5,000 out of available
right. That's
100 and some thousand. That would make those decisions easier.
that's why I prefaced I didn't want to give you a second job, but
Well, I can
Got it.
certainly tell you we've budgeted this much for construction contingency and this is how much we've applied to change orders, but you have to remember that construction contingency applies to other things too.
Right.
You take their estimate of what it was gonna cost and our bids came in higher, some of the contingency is going against that.
Right.
So the change orders are not the
It's-
only thing that's hitting the
it's
contingency.
still a dynamic number.
So then let's not create
Yeah,
extra work.
no.
I mean, we can certainly provide a report of change orders to date on the project.
Yeah.
Right, or we can give you, you know, a contingency status to let you know
Yeah.
that we're where we are as far as number without separating them out yet.
Because that way we really
Right.
can't ask the
You know, that
questions.
we're healthy.
Like Kevin brought up, we can't ask the questions of, you know, our advisors, you know, do we foresee any big ones on the tail end of this coming,
Correct.
right? Where we know where we stand right now, do we see anything come down the pipe?
Thankfully, in phase one, you know, we had a switch from fasteners to adhesive, that changed the cost a little bit. But outside of that, there hasn't been any, I don't even want to say it, any surprises, other than them not putting a roof drain together and flooding us out a little bit. But, so that's a good sign, because we're close.
Yeah.
You know, they still expect to be done and wrapped up in, at least with the roof portion, by the end of next week, and then be doing some buttoning up around the edges.
And candidly, this change order isn't necessarily a surprise. It's an infrastructure issue. We've noted on our walkthrough a couple times, there have been kind of patches to it to make it work, to minimize the implications from a safety perspective and things like that. But, you know, finding, again, a more permanent solution for it. And we've got the funds available.
I'm good with that 10,000
Mhm.
threshold with a 5,000 advisory.
Yep.
If that works, if you think that works for
Meg, sound good?
operations.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Well, I think it's a great
Good.
idea. I like that.
Okay. All right, I appreciate that.
Or is that?
Are we just getting a motion form, or are
I thought it was just a consensus.
we, okay.
Yeah, it's just us knowing where to,
Okay.
you know, we'll make sure to bring it forward and follow that guidance.
Thank you.
The Scholastic Achievement Dinner.
Yep, we set a couple dates as potential, and we'll see. We don't know. You know, it's so far off. We'll monitor it. We'll have everything in place. We'll be prepared for it, and then we'll see what's going on with COVID. We'll see what's going on with the guidance, and if we have to postpone it for a while and then see what happens later, play the game like we did last year, and then potentially, you know, we would do it at a minimum like we did last year, so the kids got recognized and had some activity. I thought that went very well. So we just want to let you know, we have these blocked, so the athletics don't get scheduled on those 2 dates.
Thank
Great idea, thank you.
One other thing, just to touch on that too, we do the Distinguished Service Award the same night. In our packets, you've been included the criteria for them and the recipients of the past on it. So if we could review that, and if anybody sees anything that we think we ought to change, that we can bring that to the September 7th meeting for discussion items, that we can touch on that, please. One other thing in here is the building walkthrough. We have scheduled for Thursday, the 26th at 6. When we set that up, I'm one that did not pay close attention to my calendar. I'm not here that day. I'm actually in Potsdam. So figured on keeping the walkthrough as is, so those that can make it on that day, and that's why you'll see on the other one, we're looking to do one on the 30th also. Just try to keep so we didn't throw wrenches in the complete apple cart.
Right, it seemed like we had others that couldn't make it on the 30th or 31st. Right.
That's good with everybody?
So we'll do the 2.
The
I
30th.
I guess my question is,
I
do we
can make
need to
either.
do the 2?
Yeah, I don't,
I know, I'm looking to, let me just sports.
I know.
I
Rhonda can make
I
the
think I'm
30th,
fine on the
right?
30th.
I'm fine on the 30th.
Five.
Tammy, you
I
good?
can do the
All right.
thirtieth. So 30th at 6 also.
So does that mean we're gonna,
I'm just looking, it's just football practice, I don't see any soccer, so, yeah, I'm good.
Okay, so we'll just do 1 on the 30th then instead of the 2.
Okay.
I'm good for August 30th.
We don't need to do 2 separate.
And I think it's better to do it as a group too, so we're all getting the same information and.
Perfect.
And we'll be adding a change this year that we discussed, that we'll be adding the principals to their building, like we used to do that for years, so that they're walking, there's sometimes conversation comes up, and it's good to hear from the building principal about what's going on or questions, so each principal would join us in their respective building for that walkthrough.
Very nice.
As we get closer to the walkthrough, has mulch must have been delivered down to Townsend School?
Correct. Yeah, playground mulch has been delivered. John, well, I'll talk about his report in a minute, but
Oh, I'm
we've got
sorry.
some things, no, you're good. We have some things going on with the playground that I'll touch on.
all right, well, thank you guys. I didn't realize that, my youngest is moving into college that day. So I probably ought to be there. So, all right. All right, so, moving on to correspondence. You see in the packets, we received some thank you notes from the graduating seniors. Which is very nice. So, was there anything else for you in the correspondence besides
No,
just the?
not for this one.
Okay, so, and presentations. Reopening and strategic plan.
Okay, that's me. So we've got a few different things, as you're well aware, and you're been involved along the way, different aspects. We completed this strategic plan. I'll talk about that first. The reopening with the new governor has some twists to it, so we'll see what comes. But I'll talk about that in a second. So, in your Inboard Docs, you've got 3 documents, and one is an overview PowerPoint PDF. The first item, that's what I'm going to kind of walk through. And then the second one is the full plan for your review. We initially had it planned out to have this meeting be the review and adoption, but we literally didn't finalize these documents until this morning. And as a rule of thumb, that's not fair to any board to get something tonight and then be asked to adopt it. So we're going to give it to you this evening. I'll review it with you. We'll leave it at that point for your further review, and we'll adopt it September 7th. I would ask, I plan on presenting this to the full staff on the 7th. So if there is anything you have questions on or concerns or anything that you see in there that you will be bringing up on the 7th as a concern or some with questions, please reach out so I can address it and make any changes to my presentation for staff prior to it being adopted. So with that said, in the PowerPoint, the first item as I go down through, everybody okay with me just walking through it versus? Okay. So as we move down through it, you know, the question is, why did we do this? The third slide, we talked about the intention. And I talked about this briefly when we got into the process. And the key was, we really want to involve the community as well as all our stakeholders within our organization as well in a process to reflect and determine whether or not only is our mission, vision, and core beliefs accurate or up to date. We hadn't done this. The mission, I was involved in the mission statement back in, I think it was, might have been 98, 99 when we did that. That's a long time ago. So we went out with the public and received information from everybody, feedback, and then we walked through the process of engaging a team and going through it. The next slide, we went out in May with community feedback. June, if you remember, we got together as a board and leadership team, and we drafted some mission, vision, and core values. And then in July, we got together as the large group, the blueprint group, with community members. I think we had 31, 32 total people with us that day.
Thought it was closer to 40.
Was it 40? Okay. And they're listed on the last slide. We'll get to those names. And we went further, reviewed the mission, core, vision, and core, gave more feedback, refined it a little bit as we move forward, identified priority areas, and gave some suggested strategies. And then we had a half a day of action planning. We brought in the teachers and staff, teachers, psychologists, and members of the LINKS team. If you remember, the LINKS team was the strategic planning instructional group that we used for years, which brings together multiple links, means linking plans together. PDP, strategic planning, and CDEP, and I think maybe one other. But it was only focused on instructional planning. And all the years that we did it, I think there's 21 years of it. We tried different formats. I was involved in all 21 in 3 different organizations, and it never really got to the depth of a strategic planning, action, science development process like what we did here. So we developed on that day objectives and action plans, which all of them are listed in the total plan for your review. And now we're at the revisions, adoption, and communication stage, which I just reviewed in our process. So the mission statement, and I do have one question for us that we can answer today, but it says, the Walton Central School District will prepare all students for a successful future by providing safe, meaningful, and engaging learning experiences that support development of the whole child. So the one question is, do we say the Walton School District, or do we say we? Versus the Walton School District. That's something that us.
This is ours, so it seems like we could say we.
Yeah, kind of makes it more of us, right? That was the thought there.
The thing that stuck out to me was the word child. Like, you know, like I know you don't want to use student twice.
Yep. The whole child is kind of it's a term that they use, so in educational wise.
I just thought it would be like the whole person or whole, you know, just not a.
Yeah.
I don't look at like juniors and seniors as
children
so much, especially when they're taller than we are.
I did with that, Paul.
Sorry, Kevin. But yeah, I do like it.
The vision statement, you know, what it looks like, who we are, what it looks like. Again, the Walton CSD, that could be we are an organization committed to learning and growing together by providing a safe, caring, inspiring, and supportive learning environment. Our students engage in a wide variety of opportunities that honor their individual diversity, varied interests, specific needs, and special talents in the classroom and beyond. And then the core values, we do have, we believe, in the core values and the list of 6. Focus on the needs of students first in every decision we make. One of the things that we suggested here was, instead of 1 through 6, we're going to do bullet points because this is not a ranking, this is a listing. So, some people may feel strong that the one that's listed 6 should be 3, but it's not a ranking. So we're gonna do bullet points. Demonstrate pride in our work and our students, act with integrity in all that we do, model responsibility in all of our operations and functions, foster an environment of care, compassion, support, and innovation, and engage with the community and develop a sense of teamwork with and between all stakeholders by communicating clearly and transparently. Okay? And then the 4 priority areas that were developed, school community partnerships, student opportunities, mental health and wellness, and instructional excellence. And then we've got the statements coming off of each one of those priority areas, as you can see. And then we go into the action step development off of each of the priorities. So there's 4 priority areas, so there's 4 action step plans for each priority area. So there's only a couple in here as examples, because you have the full plan that have the details. Now, off of each of these action steps, each one of these items will be, in some cases, multiple steps to achieve it. So we'll be developing deeper action plans that will address it so that we can complete our tasks as listed. It's a lot of work. They took on a heavy task. This one's only got 4. The next one's got 7. And each one of those could be very deep. We've got one of them that talks about the next building project and things for us to consider as we look into that. I left it in as an action step, even though this isn't the year for us to be exploring it, but it was important to the team and important to the group. So we left it in, and we'll capture it as we do our reporting as to when that timeline is for considerations, which we've already started to develop those timelines for the facility for that. So that's the action plans. Next steps, you'll see on 13 in black, we've got it detailed out. So presenting this evening, I will not put it out to the website until we get adoption. The next meeting we adopt that night, earlier that day, I will be presenting to faculty and staff the whole process and the key points, especially with mission and vision. I'm going to present mission, vision, and core beliefs and process. The principals are, the 3 of them will present the action steps and what ones specifically apply to their buildings. So they'll go a little deeper and answer any questions that may come up. So that will be on opening day, and then in November you'll get updates. We'll do a presentation here of updates, and that'll be a PowerPoint with the action steps with notes associated with it. Some color coding, green if it's completed, or in process, whatever the case may be. So I've got a template for that, and we'll work through that process. And then again in January, and then in June, a final report. And then in July, we started over again without the initial mission, vision, and beliefs. That's done. And then next year in July, we'll get together with that blueprint team again, the large group, presentations on how we did, review those, and then go back into the next year's planning. So that's the cycle. So, any questions on that? It's been a great process so far, I think. 2 out of 3 of the events, many of you were at. So it's quite a process. There is a 1-pager, the blueprint highlights, that just kind of puts it all together on one document that is there as well. And that just encapsulates it. We will change the Walton CSD to the we. Everybody in agreement with that, so we can adjust some of these documents? Okay, and I'm going to change the 1 through 6 to bullet points. I meant to do that. Haven't got away from me. So. Okay. Well, the key is going to be next June, right? It's all good to put it down on paper.
Right.
And we put a lot of stakeholders in the room. We have a lot of vested and a lot of interest now, a lot of eyes on it. So you talk about accountability. When you put 40 people in the room, and then bring the same ones back next year, and they're gonna wanna see the progress, we've got a little accountability going on here. So, I will be working with the administrators and managers, building those additional steps. And, you know, this is a little bit of my sickness, action planning, systems, moving it forward. I spent 4 years at BOCES just cranking with 500 employees doing this. So, these guys get sick of hearing me say systems, they get sick of hearing me talk action planning, but they haven't seen anything yet. They're gonna get really sick during this year of this stuff. But that's how we're gonna improve.
I like it, and I like the color coding.
You like that?
I do.
You have no idea how hard I worked on that color coding.
I believe you do, but I know how much you
I
love your
honestly
tech
did.
stuff.
You asked Corey, she saw the draft of it that we got from Kevin, and we couldn't handle it, so I finally,
Little OCD on that. I like it. I like it. Don't get me wrong. It's very clear and directive.
yeah, it works out very well. So, moving on to reopening. You've all seen the reopening plan that's out on the web. We use the same website, same process as what we had available for the public. I put the letter out in the school messenger. We have not received negative feedback. There are a few concerns, there are a few clarifications that parents have asked, and we've given that. We continue to give it. There are some decisions being made on individuals that were homeschooling, whether or not their kids were gonna come back. Many have. We're up in enrollment. It's really pushing the limits. We are gonna have to add a section in at least one of our grade levels at Townsend, and potentially another one to stay within our spacing. So we're working through those details. I'll provide more as it comes. But so far, so good. We are able in the elementary school. Part of the reason why we're pushing some of these sections is that we're working diligently. We're bound and determined to eat in the cafeteria, other than breakfast, grab and go for some grade levels. We're gonna eat lunch in the cafeteria. We're adding dividers down through the tables. So we've got all those sheets, and we're gonna build them in-house, and we're gonna put them down so kids can sit across from each other at 3 feet, eat, mask back on, just during a time period. So they can take a mask break, they can eat. They're gonna be more than 3 feet, but that's gonna be the distance. And they can face each other with a guard. So we're able to do that. We're able to have the specials for elementary back in their specials location. It was not the same last year. It's not the same with art and music going around on a carpet. So we've gotten that adjusted, and we should be pretty good. Over here, we're able, the same thing, we're able to use our cafeteria again, so we're not O&M, John and Miller, and I think there's one other staff member who went in every day, set up 100 tables and chairs and tore down 100 tables and chairs every single day, so we could use half the gymnasium for phys ed outside of the time period of the lunch. We're able to work through that, so now we'll be back in the cafeteria. So even with having to come back and having to wear masks on transportation, and then masks 5% or less of the rest of the day when they're in the building with mask breaks, as of today's guidance, we've got even more of a sense of normalcy than we had last year. We left in June, so we're trying hard to get there. New governor today did put out a mandate for masks following CDC guidance across the state. So any districts that went different now have a governor who's ordering it. DOH guidance is coming down in 2 days. The only information we have on that is it's going to be concise and consistent across the state. And it's going to be a DOH order versus suggestion. So we'll see what comes. We'll adjust as we need to, and I'll keep everybody informed. So that's kind of where we're at.
Very convenient for that to come again a few weeks before school starts. Huh?
Absolutely. Yep, and it'll come on a Friday, so we have to work all weekend to make it happen.
But thank you guys for all of that, everybody. O&M, everybody who makes it work
It's going
with the
well.
ever-changing hourly stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So,
You just don't know. And we'll see what happens. There's a number of things out there we don't know about. She is floating out there, possibility of vaccinations being required or weekly testing for school personnel, various things. There's all types of things she's considering. We'll see. And whatever's ordered, we'll respond, and we'll work with our people to make things happen. But as of now, that's where we are. We'll find out too, we'll get everything out to you when it comes out, hopefully by the time, time the weekend comes. But knowing the state government, it'll be out 5 p.m. or Sunday at noon. That's what
And then Monday
that's
you'll
what they've
have
been
to-
doing to us.
Monday, you'll have to let us know the next action plan. No,
Yeah.
just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where we have, fall sports is going. Volleyball is practicing tonight as you came in. And, all the rest of our fall sports, football, soccer, field hockey, they're all going, no mask outside, so they're getting after it. Okay?
Good to hear.
See, looked like the numbers were coming up for the students enrolled versus the home school, correct? Or because of the COVID?
Yeah, we had, homeschool went up last year.
Last year, it just about doubled.
Yeah, about double. We're getting more and more of them coming back. We have some of their questions that we're working through with them. But overall enrollment, we just looked at it. Last year at bed's time, it was 820 something, Meg, right? 820 something, I believe you enrolled. 827. Right now, and they're not all in and caught, we're already up to 866. So we've already gained a good number back. And we have, I know, of at least 5 that are in question, homeschool related. Yeah, 5. So we'll see what happens with that, but we're increasing. And every time I turn around, they're telling me they've got more calls. This grade level, that grade level, we don't know if they're coming, we don't know if they're not coming. So we're just growing. And over here, I think I heard today they had 5 or 10, I think, reach outs on enrollment. So, which makes sense because it was very confusing on why we had that sudden drop, because when I broke it down, it was people moving within the state. It wasn't going homeschool. We did have an increase, but it wasn't that substantial of an increase, and we lost like 80 kids quickly, and it made no sense. So when we went down through, broke it down for their exit reasons, a good chunk of that was went elsewhere, went to another public school within New York State. I found that interesting. I figured it was going to be maybe they went south, or maybe they left New York, right? Because we always hear about that, talk about it. We had some, but that wasn't the largest percentage. A big group of them, but they went somewhere. So whether that was, we had talked about economic hardship, and they went with family or wherever they had to go to get through COVID, or whatever was going on, but we're now seeing the rebound, which is nice. It just makes it really hard with your socially distanced classrooms. If you think you have a plan, and then 2 weeks before school, you potentially have 2 more sections you need. So, they just want to keep life interesting, that's all.
Yeah, but glad to see the kids who are coming back to
Oh,
the
it's
school
great.
versus at home. The level's just not
Yeah.
comparable.
That's one note, thank you for saying that, Kevin. The one piece in the plan that is different than last year is that we removed remote school. There's no remote only schooling, with the exception of medical exemptions. Our medical director legally, and then our medical director, we have an application process that goes to the medical director, goes to the student's primary, then to the medical director. Medical director makes a decision on it, and then it comes to us. We're not doing it anymore. Now, an exception to that will be, a medical exemption would be, if somebody is placed by order in quarantine, we will remote for that time period so you don't lose instruction by order.
So-
Outside of that, there's no remote only.
So classroom instructional staff, you're going to have to task a teacher with teaching to that student as well as their ordinary class, or are you going to give them more packet work or
No,
individual?
we'll do period by period like we did. The
Okay.
difference being, so I'll take it for high school wise. High school last year had, if they had a class of, let's say their normal class size was 25, they may have had 12 one day, 12 on the screen. And then anybody who was out quarantined, whatever the case may be. This year, majority will have none. We're predicting less than 5 per school, medical exemption, less than that, potentially even 0. We ended the year with 60 in the high school, 18 in the middle school.
From a confidentiality perspective, so if kids are home and on the screen, I mean, it's going to be virtually assumed that they're COVID positive.
Or they have some,
or exposure.
Or they have some kind of reason that they've been approved to be home for.
Yeah, because it doesn't necessarily have to be them personally, if they have somebody vulnerable at
Right,
home that
no,
they
I
live
just,
with. I think that it's great that you have eliminated that, I think that for now,
But you do make a good point.
but you know, you have to look at all, nobody knows what exactly is going on, I mean, people can assume, but I think that it's great that they don't have the choice to just lay there and come on, they have to come actually in school unless they're medically exempt.
no, I think that's important too. It's just, you know, from a confidentiality
Right.
perspective, I mean, and the use of rudimentary deductive reasoning, you know, you could say, oh, well, so-and-so isn't here, but they're up there, were here yesterday, what's that mean for me?
Right. Well, if they're there, under quarantine, everybody in that classroom is
No, I know,
probably gonna be with them, or half of them. But I understand what you mean. Now, the one thing that was a consideration, or is a consideration, there's two different, for somebody who was out for the medical exemption, there's two different BOCES run remote schools, virtual academies,
Okay.
that we can buy into at the same fee as a CTE program, essentially. So $12,000 per student for the whole year. They can go in and stay in there the whole year. And that is out there that we could go down through for medical exemption and not put it out there. But for the quarantine in and out, there's just no other option for that student to be able to maintain their instruction.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you could have a student who wasn't in school. We had a number of those last year, right? A student who was not in school came in close contact and ended up being quarantined. It didn't affect any of their peers.
Right.
So I'll look into that.
No,
Yeah. But the remote only, like I said, the academies are
Mhm.
there. But with the low number that we're going to have and the fact that we're structurally sound to be able to do it, we can do it.
no, and like Miranda said, and has been, you know, reinforced by a lot of mental health experts, giving people the structure, the
Yep.
students, to get them back in the classroom, to give them more routine, particularly with sports, things like that. I mean, all of this is, it's better from a psychological perspective.
Oh, without a doubt, it is. Absolutely. Yep.
And not casting stones towards BOCES or the programs, but I think we have a tremendous staff here. Not good
Mhm.
to have our staff teaching our students,
Mm-hmm.
even if it has to be through,
Yeah, without a doubt.
you know,
Yeah.
stream.
Yeah, but the confidentiality is an interesting outlook, and make sure we're okay as a school district.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's all I had on that.
Is there any additions to the agenda?
Yes, we have two additions to the agenda. Both of these are affecting current consent agenda items. So item 8K, we will be adding an emergency appointment for a coach until further notice. And item 8L, personnel approvals, we will be adding one of our new teachers, Ashton Johnston, to receive 3 summer days at her per diem rate for library preparation. And those again are being added to current consent agenda items.
Yep. Library and classroom.
Okay. So, the consent agenda, does anybody have any questions on the consent agenda? Want to go down through item by item, or?
I have no concerns.
I have no concerns, I've read them.
See, our out of district number that we started with, Corey, was at 15, now we're down to like 6, so.
Right.
And most of them are
And-
staff and students,
Right,
students and
and
staff, so.
several will be graduating this year.
Yep.
If not, can I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Motion.
Second, please.
Second. Second.
Oh, second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to new business. district-wide safety plans. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the district-wide safety plan, and is there any questions on the plan?
There were no changes to that since it was presented to you,
Looks
other
good to
than
me.
what you had in the draft.
Do I have a motion to accept that plan?
After reading 80 pages, I'd move that.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Tax, right? Okay. Tax warrant pretty much is a routine. Anybody have questions on tax warrant? If not, I have a motion to accept the tax warrant.
I'll move it.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Authorized pre-referendum service proposals. Do you have something to comment on that one?
That's for CNS not to exceed 10,000 to help us with development of that next project with the floor remediation for pre-referendum work. It definitely is, as we saw in the facilities committee, definitely nice to have the construction manager working with us from the beginning. Just with our organization and stuff that Grady talked about today, so.
Yeah, it helps, it really helps build the scope clearly for us, you know, so we're not trying to build it ourselves, so. I was gonna ask that, I didn't see the 10,000 limit in that, on this one, but,
Yeah, we added it in the recommended action.
okay,
You see it up above.
yep, thank you.
Yep.
Any other discussion, questions on this? If not, I have a motion to accept.
Motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Then emergency, personnel emergency appointments.
Two positions I talked about in the previous meeting that were gonna be coming up as needing emergency.
Anybody have questions on these? Or discussions? If not, we have a motion to accept.
Motion.
A second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Um, Then down to E, personnel appointments. Quite a list here. John George driver, Christy Stevens driver, Bobby Wright, food helper, or hit part-time. Mary Frainer. And it continues on. Arnold Klein, Kristen Harvey, and Jessica Fancher. Does everybody have any questions on any of these or comments or discussion? If not, I have a motion to accept these appointments.
I'd make that motion.
A second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we got to F, personnel improvements. This is for Kristen Harvey to receive 2 days of curriculum development for the summer at her per diem rate. Any questions or discussions? If not, have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And, personnel, mentor approvals.
This is for the new teacher you just
Yep.
appointed.
So, does, have any questions, or, this is a good program, I'm glad this got started, these mentor programs. I have a motion for approval,
I'll make a motion.
second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right, then. The, now down to H, the approval of the 2021-22 superintendent salary. With, regarding Mike's contract, we've done the increase now. So does anybody have any discussions, or not? I can receive a motion.
I'd make that motion.
Second, please.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for your hard work.
And leading everybody so hard, it seemed to go down the chain very well this year. Thank you. Can you walk out of here tonight?
What's that?
Okay.
Okay, now into old business. Excuse me. Cse and Cpsc Committee, the only changes on this, right, was the
The parental.
parental,
Right.
so. Does anybody have any questions or have reviewed that?
These are
No.
the same parents as the previous year.
So if not, we'll have a motion, please.
I can make that motion.
Thank you, second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alright. Excuse me, the committees, see, we've had the, on a district safety committee, basically, this is just a name change, right? We're going from, to have Adam Hoover appointed, because it has athletic director. So, I have a motion to accept that.
I'll move that. I'll second your motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then to update the CRSA and ARP spending plan. Is there any questions or
Yeah, we thought
comments?
it'd be good to bring it back from time to time. This is out there, and then, if you have any questions regarding it. And Megan, as far as any adjustments, we haven't made any adjustments in the original plan, have we, at this point?
Nothing significant. We've made a few tweaks, but nothing that really changes the intent of it.
So, just so we keep it in front of everybody's attention. We're still developing ARRP? ARP. That goes at the end of the month, right?
Let's do the 31st, right?
And this in public content is available to everybody to review, right?
Correct.
There's
It's
a
on the
website,
website, thank you.
Correct.
Good.
It's been on the website since, I think it's the second week of July.
Yeah, just because there's so much public input into that process, both of those, I just want to make sure it's not only just for us to get
Yep.
reacquainted or.
Absolutely.
I have a motion then to,
There's no.
no, that's just
Nope.
update.
Just an update.
Sorry, I have it then. All right. Policy updates. So, now, I'm gonna probably get this messed up. But these here policies, we actually changed these one here. This is just for our ones that we want to bring up for review for the board members
This
on a
is,
regular basis, correct?
this is the current, code of conduct that has to be adopted for this year.
Okay. So,
And we did make an update since it was brought to you in June. We had to add the DAC representatives. They were formerly called DASA. So we have 4 of them. One is the district representative, and then we have 3 building representatives. And their contact information is now in the code of conduct.
Okay.
Used to be you could put titles, and they, we literally this year had to put name,
We had to put name and
email,
contacts.
so.
Okay. Anybody have any questions, or if not, receive a motion?
Motion.
Pass. Second,
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Alright, so I got ahead of myself. This is where we talked about bringing these policies up for our reviews. Just as a reminder, we had talked in the past of, I think it started with the policy committee, that when we were redoing all these policies, to bring a list of policies back to the board periodically, just for the board to review them and see if they thought there was anything that needed to be changed and kicked to the policy committee.
Yeah.
So this is just a list to do that. These are things we don't need to take action on tonight, but if people could review them and you have an opportunity, and if you see something, let it for you, I guess, and then we'll get it pushed to the committees. So, would be appreciated. And then we're to the administrative remarks. Everybody should have the copies of the administrative reports, and we don't have the administrators with us tonight, but is there any questions on the reports?
Ask them to focus on how, summer and being prepared for school with their reporting this month, so.
They definitely have, it's funny to see how this has grown.
The
When
report.
these first started, it was very kind of just bullets,
Yeah.
and now some of these, they're more and more detailed in them. I mean, this was a good thing to get started. I like this very much.
Me too. I like this process where they write it up and then you, because if you want to go back and
Right.
reference something, you can, so.
Right.
Yep.
Or
Go through it.
look into things, so.
And to see it before the meeting gives you an opportunity to see what's there, and if you want to be, if you have a question that comes up, I always find it hard if I get it right now and they're there, I gotta ask a question, but if I haven't, I can think on it, so. I just wanted to point out, the only comments I have for this evening is just to point out the work that we're doing at the elementary. Last year when we did a walkthrough, we talked about the fence, we got the fence fixed when we had basketball court. We talked about the basketball rims, they'll be replaced by the end of September, they're on back order, they're coming in. We talked about the edging around the playground, where running on it, it's hard plastic. So John mentions in his report, he met Friday with a company, who they went over, they're giving us a quote for the company actually to come in and do it. That's what they do, they install. So they're getting us a quote for that versus our guys doing it when they're not experts on it and getting it in. He did get the load of bark that we do for every year, so that's being done. We also identified there's 2 different slides that were cracked, that they've been patching. And then they break up and then they're patching. So if you can think about plastic, if you're not keeping on it and that cracks, you're looking for a major pinch. And it's no, we're not doing that. So we're getting the 2 replaced. One of which we think is under warranty. The company is Parktech is actually the company that was bought through. So they're working on that one. The other one is an older piece of equipment, so we may end up replacing the whole piece of equipment. But we're not going to have a slide that's going to be a pincher. That would hurt. That would hurt and cause injury. So working on that. So just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. And other than that, we're trying to get things ready. O&M is in the K1. This is an update from his report, but they have had that wing turned over. So they're now in there waxing and cleaning and putting it back. So hopefully the teachers will be in there next week, by midweek, and be able to get the room set up, we hope. So the goal originally was the 23rd, and we got it back on the 23rd, so I give our construction folks a lot of credit. They held to their timeline. So actually a week earlier, we gave them right up till Labor Day, but they hoped for the 23rd. That's all at this point. Everybody's working hard, and we'll see what comes this week with any type of guidance that makes us change. I mentioned that we have 1 or 2 grade levels that we may be scrambling We already have one, we are scrambling to get a section, and we did have we have a science teacher position that we're looking to replace in high school as well. We had a resignation of that, so, other than that, we're full staff. So. Okay, so I got.
Alright. I don't think we have any need for executive sessions. But before we do adjourn, we'd like to mention that we need everybody to sign the tax bill, correct?
Correct.
So before everybody leaves, please sign this tax bill here. And then I guess if we can get a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Awesome. Keep up the great work.
We're trying.